at WLFE-DB.com for upcoming shows and so much more.
Hey everyone, it's Tuesday night again. You know what that means, don't you? It's time to join Mike and Christy for another episode of Where's My Sage? A show hosted by a psychic medium and a guy on a quest to find Bigfoot. Who would have thought? Together, they will take you on all sorts of adventures, and not with lots of different people. Christy even gives readings. It's time to sit back, get up and get ready. You can't sample the universe sitting down. Your hosts are waiting. Come on, let's go!
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Where's My Sage. I'm Mike here with my co-host, Christy in London, and how are you all doing this evening? And we're trying something new tonight. We're on, on live at the venue at Paranormal Oddities, and we're running off two microphones at the same time, so
I get to hear him twice with a lag.
No, I'm just going to put myself on mute, and we're going to run off her microphone
and an echo.
tonight. So,
oh, it's a great.
How are you this evening?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So we're at a special location tonight.
We are super excited because we haven't been here in a long time, and because we have a special event coming up tomorrow night. So we are at, for those of you who do follow us and those of you who don't, we are at Paranormal Oddities tonight, located in Depew, New York. And Joe Para Oddities, owns this awesome, wonderful shop. He has been able to now slowly take over the whole building, which means he gets to expand. So he has created the room you are seeing now that we are broadcasting from tonight, which is now called the venue. He has had Dustin Perry here. He has had Andrea Richards and Deirdre. Deirdre, I'm drawing a blank on your last name, but she's from Souls Gate Paranormal, do shows and readings here. He is really taking off. People are really coming. I believe Nick Roth and Tessa Del Zoppo will be here at some point in the future. So there is a lot going on here. But tomorrow night, yours truly will be doing a gallery reading right here in the venue, as you can see in the background here. So, and there are still tickets available. So you can either call and purchase your tickets ahead of time, or you can just show up. Tomorrow night, the show starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the tickets are $40 a piece. And it's going to be a great time because I decided that with the last couple of years and the way things have gone, we're going to take off and we're going to grab this year by the ass before it even gets here, right? Ticker.
Oh, geez. Ticker. Oh, man.
And we're going to ring this new year in my way, right? Our way, my way. Blue Eye Down Path with good old blue eyes. We're going to do this. So come on down and join us. And yes, Mike will be here as well. So you can meet us both, participate in the gallery. It's going to be a great time. So we can't wait. So we're super excited. And so Joe was nice enough to let us come tonight and broadcast. And it's been a long time since we've been here to broadcast. So,
and this is a special location for us. I mean, we did our first show. Yeah. Where's My Sage?
Our maiden voyage.
And Joe has since expanded in the store next door. I mean, if you're looking for your stuff in Western New York for, doing paranormal investigations and voodoo classes and a whole bunch of other cool classes he's got coming down, check out his site. And again, this room is freaking amazing. Oh, yeah. And I'm dropping things on the floor.
And I got the stage behind
just my
me.
Glasses, So, stage is back there. So, we're very happy to be here. And,
yes.
And Joe's got his show. That's awesome. And a lot of our friends are in and out of here all the time. So, it's a great location. So, come on, check things out tomorrow. Christy be here doing her show and do her gallery. Check Joe's stuff out, and please like, share, subscribe to this. lot of amazing stuff tonight.
This is going to be so much fun.
On mute. Who's on mute? Are you on mute too?
I was on mute too. Yeah, but we you were talking. So
yeah. So at least we have somebody watching telling us we're on mute. Yay! Okay. So, yeah. So again, it's gonna be. We're gonna get the bugs out tonight. We're usually not in the same location. All right. So again,
we're trying to cut it all down so it's not so echoey and so ridiculously repetitive for you. Our guest was so kind. He went in the private chat. Was like, "Oh, you guys you're on mute. Oh, you're sorry."
Because I can hear on both sides. So again, we're Paranormal Oddities, and we're in the venue. Christy's doing a live gallery tomorrow. Lots of bugs. Yep, they are creeping and they are crawling tonight. So she's doing her live gallery from here tomorrow. This is the first location that we ever did an episode of Where's My Sage. So we're really honored to be back here. Joe let us back in. Check out his show. That's another great one. So
Para Blues is the
Para
name.
Blues. And we have a great, and I'm going to try it again. We have a great guest this evening. And I hope everybody had, before I forget. So again, we're coming to you from 8 different locations tonight. Please ask your questions in the comments. We're coming to you from Christy's 3 public pages. Where's My Sage on Facebook and YouTube, Tactical Bigfoot Research on Facebook and YouTube, and WLFEDB Radio on YouTube. So I think I caught all those again. And then tomorrow, again, like usual, if you're looking for those past shows, they're live on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, so you can listen to just the audio if you're just looking for the audio. So please like and share, get those numbers up. Please follow our YouTube page, because that's where we're going to do a lot more stuff with Facebook not putting notifications out like they really should. So let me give you a quick little rundown on our guests. Tonight we have Ronald Murphy Jr., who's been investigating the stuff of nightmares for over 30 years. He's been investigating things that go bump in the night and meticulous research the history, psychology, context of myths, legends from around the world. Mr. Murphy seeks to uncover archetypal, I can't even talk tonight, precedent for monsters that haunt our collective thought. He's also a great member of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, and I'm going to bring Ron up with us. Good evening, sir, and how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm
you.
honored. Yeah, you went off, guys, for about 20 minutes. I'm sure that it was something very important to say. I saw 2 mouths moving. That doesn't make for great radio. That's the whole thing.
No.
But then you come back on, it's like it's in Yankee Stadium. I was hoping you were going to say awesome. Now batting Ron Murphy. That would have been nice.
See, way to screw that up, Mike.
Well, I'm not a beast.
He's like, I don't know. I'm looking here, I'm looking here, I'm looking here. Thank you for having so much patience and going with the flow with us. We really appreciate it.
No. This is great, guys. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, well, we're going to try. I have this line down the front of my face here. I can't figure out how to get rid of it. So we're gonna go with that. There we go. Okay, I guess there was a hair on my lens. Okay. I've been seeing crazy lights around here all night, and it's just the way things are. So
yeah.
So, Mr. Murphy,
yes.
How did you get involved in the crazy world of cryptids and paranormal?
You know what? I have to tell you that I owe this all to my mother, because ever since I was a little boy, she would instill in me that there were more things out there than simply meets the eye. There were things that go bump in the night, and back in the day, before we had things like the internet, we used to gather around things called the radio, if anybody remembers these things. And every now and then we would turn the radio on when there was nothing on television, because that was before cable, so we only had 4 channels. So we would listen to a station out of Pittsburgh called KDKA. And about once a month, they would have Stan Gordon on there, and he would be talking about Bigfoot activity, UFO activity that was going around. And I came from a very small town in Western Pennsylvania called Blairsville, about 35 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Nothing ever happened in that town. There was about 2 street lights in that town. But guess what? In the winter of 77, Bigfoot now started showing himself in and around my town. And, my mother would load us up in the car, my brother and I, and we would go into the back roads of the Chestnut Ridge looking for Bigfoot because Stan would tell, people, the listeners, where these encounters were supposedly taking place. And we would do our own little investigations. Now, of course, we've never seen anything. I've never even seen anything yet to this day. But it was that kind of wanderlust that was instilled into me at a very early age that really kept me going. And I enjoyed going to the library as well too. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't do. But back in the 70s, we had to go to the library and find, the several books that they had written on Bigfoot or UFOs or what have you. But I went to parochial school. I went to St. Simon and Jude in Blairsville. And I am convinced that one of the nuns there had to be a closeted cryptozoologist because I had never seen a small library like this so stocked with books on the paranormal, not only on Bigfoot and the Yeti, but Von Doniken was in there. A lot of kind of conjecture type of books and speculative books were in there. So it was a great time to be a kid. This was my childhood, investigating the things of legends, reading about things out of actual books, gathering my friends together and starting Bigfoot clubs in the summertime, and we would go out in the woods and looking for this creature of myth and legend. And then I got a little bit older, and you may find this hard to believe there, Chrissy, and I know Mike that you know this all too well. You get to a certain age, and women no longer find people that are interested in Bigfoot appealing. So whenever I was going into high school, this was not a good thing to be, so I had to keep that kind of quiet. He was still in the background, but I wasn't like kind of, promoting it anymore. And then I went to college and I was taking an anthropology class, Anthropology 101. And there was a section in the anthropology book about the possibility of a creature like the Gigantopithecus living up into the era that human beings could have interacted with it. And that may have given rise to this legends of these wild men. Um, and it was as if Bigfoot came into the classroom and sat down beside me and said, "Now, what do you do with me?" Um, because this was the first time in an academic format that I was introduced to the idea that Bigfoot might be more than the stuff of In Search of, or That's Incredible. It might have a meaning to us. And ever since that time, I've been, poring over the literature of the Western tradition as well as the Eastern tradition. And I'm starting to connect the dots. And I find things like Bigfoot or things that are able to transform, like werewolves and vampires and all these great type of characters are archetypes within the human consciousness. They all mean things to the same, they're all the same symbol to people around the world. They may go by different names and have, different attributes from time to time. But for the most part, the way we see these kind of creatures is the way all of humanity sees them. And that is very interesting to me, the way the human mind works. And they seem to be embroidered into the very DNA of who we are. And that is my field of study at this point.
Awesome. Now the Ridge, that's an interesting area. And do you spend a lot of time there now, getting into, you got everything from UFOs to ghosts to everything else there in the Ridge, which
Right.
tends to run some interesting stuff.
Well, whenever I grew up, I could actually see the Chestnut Ridge out of my window at home. I lived in Blairsville. I lived, basically right around the foot of the Chestnut Ridge. And interestingly enough, where I just bought my house a few years ago, I live on the corner of Chestnut and Ridge, and you can see the Chestnut Ridge out my bedroom window right now. So yeah, I spend a lot of time in and around this place. I have 5 children. We do a lot of hiking. So there's a lot of things that go on as part of family activities that I will vicariously look for Bigfoot clues along the way and such. But I've had some interesting things happen to me on just typical walks whenever I was with my kids. This probably happened about 8 years ago, and we were walking up on Lynn Run, which is a beautiful area of the Laurel Highlands, the Chestnut Ridge area, and we were driving up there in the summertime, and there was one of these late afternoon showers, and by the time we got to the parking area, there was a deep, heavy fog, just from the humidity and everything. But we decided to take a walk nonetheless. But as we went deeper and deeper into the woods, there was a sense that came upon me that I really never had before, and it was almost as an instinct which I never knew before kind of kicked in, kind of like a flight or fight response, but in relation to being a parent, if that makes any sense to you guys. It was as if I'm not being responsible right now, taking my kids out here, and this was just a typical walk. Um,
Yeah.
so we went for a while and we decided that, there is something out there. I can feel something out there. So it's kind of time to turn around. So we turn around, and my oldest son, who's now 20, and I think he was probably about 8 at the time, he, didn't want to return to the car, but he started to pick up rocks and just absentmindedly throwing them into the woods, um, and it started to give me the creeps a little bit. I could start feeling the goosebumps rise and everything. So I looked back at him. I said, Donovan, you got to stop throwing rocks. But as it were, we were probably about a half a mile back. So we're walking out a half a mile, and he continues to throw the rocks. And I turned around. I said, Donovan, listen, buddy, stop throwing the rocks. And he agreed that he would. Went on for a little while longer, and a gosh darn rock again. I turned around. I said, Donovan, stop throwing rocks. And he bent over and picked up a rock from the path. And he said, Dad, something threw this at me. So these kind of things can happen. And even though I've never seen these creatures, there is enough circumstantial evidence that I've gathered, from my own experiences, let alone the experiences that I've talked with, probably hundreds of people, probably approaching 1,000 people at this point, of people that have had encounters with something that they simply cannot explain.
Yeah, I've been there for a rock throw, and I can't explain it myself.
Right. Yeah, and the thing about rock throwing is, in order to do that, you have to have fingers. You know what I mean? This isn't like a squirrel somehow took a rock up in the tree and drops it down. This is coming with a trajectory. This is coming with it's a pre-planned type of thing. Something is actually throwing it. And what was interesting is it wasn't throwing it to hurt anybody, because I'm sure if it was, if it intended to, it would certainly be able to do that. There was something about the rock being thrown to let us know that it was there. One thing, which is kind of spooky if you think about it. And the other, uh, the other way that I see the rock throwing incident as well is not only did it alert us to its presence, but it alerted us that it could now interact with us in a way that we might not want it to interact with us anymore. And it's the same reason I had my children out there that day. It's very possible that this creature had its children out there that day as well too, and it was afraid. Again, these are things that keep me going. People ask me why I keep on going, because this is a field filled with ridicule. We're in the fringe area as it is. Nobody gets along with anybody in this field. You're opening yourself up to so much degradation. But what keeps
Breathe,
me
Mike.
going is, yeah, what keeps me
Breathe.
going is the idea that there is something else out there that possibly I could get a little bit closer to answering that question.
Okay, I have to interject. Mike keeps giving me weird looks. So Would you like a reading?
Yes. You know what? This is the truth. I've never had a reading in my life. Never.
Oh my God, I'm
I've
sorry.
never had a
The
reading.
I
plate.
can see her.
Yeah, I know.
taking
He keeps
notes.
looking
I'm
at
like,
me.
oh,
I'm
here it
taking
comes.
notes. My breathing. I can't help it. She's so pushy that if I don't give you this message, she's not going to leave us alone, and I am not going to be able to focus. So, in the place that we're in right now, the building itself is very haunted. So I have the known spirit that's here, whose name is James, is in the back, and he keeps waving at me from the back room. Your mother's passed, correct?
She has, yes.
She's here with me, and she is pushy. Does that sound about right?
She could be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
She
absolutely.
wants my attention, and she has something to say. So, at first, it was hard for me to breathe, especially in my back. So when I have that issue with the breathing, and it's in the lower back like that, the lower lungs, that usually that what they're trying to tell me is spirit's way of telling me that they had something serious like COPD, pneumonia, emphysema, lung cancer, something along those lines. What was that? Okay. Can you validate that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, her death was from heart disease. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, because the other thing she kept telling me too was it was hard for me to breathe, but then it wasn't hard for me to breathe. It was hard for me to breathe, and then it wasn't hard for me to breathe. Does that make sense? It's almost like it was weird. It was like an anomaly the way it was happening.
Fluctuating, right? Absolutely, it was. Her
Okay.
death was very sudden. It was so sudden, as a matter of fact.
Hold on. Don't tell me
Okay.
anything else. Sorry. You
Okay.
can tell
Sure.
me in a second. So the other way she's coming to me is she's giving me feelings. She's not talking to me. She's not showing herself to me. So the way is he okay?
He's okay.
Okay. The way she is presenting also tells me that she was not able to communicate either effectively or at all at the time she passed.
That's correct.
Thank you. So the first thing she wants me to tell you is, or the big thing she wants me to tell you is, she says, yes, I am around. You're just not listening. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. Yeah, I'm known to make some pretty bad life choices. So
Oh my God. She's like, he has been talking to me and looking for me everywhere, and he's not paying attention when I answer him.
yes.
So this is the only way she can let you know right now that yes, she hears you. Stop bugging her. If you're not going to listen and pay attention, then you need
Yes.
to leave her alone.
Yes.
No. How do you connect with Q, the letter Q? What does that mean to you?
The letter Q.
Yeah. Past,
Boy.
present, yourself, any combination. It may have nothing to do with your mom.
Yeah. I can't think of anything right now. The letter
Saw
Q.
the letter Q.
Question?
Very. All right, listen,
Yeah.
smartass. The other thing is when I started, when I was writing the last two notes,
Mhm.
my hand started to cramp up like I had no control over, no muscle control. Did that, was that something she also suffered from, or am I picking up on somebody
Oh
else?
no, that's 100% the case. She had several surgeries on her hands.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was your
So,
mother. She's
yeah.
saying thank you. She's done. We can continue the show now. Sorry, guys. You never know what's going to happen around here.
Yes.
So, okay.
No, I appreciate that, and
So
that
moving on,
actually
Michael, what's your
rings
next
true
question?
very much so. Yeah. Well,
No.
the thing is, though,
Good.
you know,
Thank you.
somebody that has had that kind of impact on your life, and she passed away quite suddenly. Whenever I was still I was still in college. She passed away quite suddenly to the point that
Yeah.
I had an autopsy done, but we found out that she did have some heart problems and things.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Whenever somebody makes such an impression on your life, and then you go on to have a family, and that person cannot be an impression upon those kids too. You know,
I'm sorry.
that's
I'm
what,
not laughing at you. When
that's
Spirit
okay.
starts talking, your mom's a
Yeah.
smart ass. I love her.
Oh yeah,
She's
absolutely.
sassy. She's like, well, yeah, I was the best. Like, really? He's trying to have a moment. She's making me laugh. That was getting in trouble that way. So
That's right.
you were really very blessed. She's very proud of you. Very,
Oh,
very
I
proud of
appreciate
you.
that. Yeah.
And she's around you, especially your one daughter, the one
Yeah.
who struggles to read
Yes.
and comprehend.
Yeah.
I think I only met one of your children, right, at the one Paracon we
You
were
did.
at.
That's right. That's right.
And I don't even know if that's the child she's talking about. I just
Yeah.
know it's the child, the daughter that has issues with reading comprehension
Mm.
or something along those lines. And she She says, I am absolutely looking out for her. Your mom is like a teacher of some sort or a mentor.
Yeah. Well, perfect.
So, yeah. So, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. You did have a cool mom. You are very lucky that
I
you had somebody
was.
to nurture this side
Yeah.
of things for you,
Yeah.
even because just at any level, Bigfoot, paranormal, all
That's
of
right.
it.
Well, see, I think that's what's so interesting about this show, which is really is an honor for me to do this show, is whenever I do these programs, so many of them are geared to just one thing. And Mike, you go out there and you do research, and it's never usually just one thing that's happening. I've investigated, Bigfoot sightings where there's also ghost lights present, or the idea that, Bigfoots and UFOs and hauntings. I'm of the opinion that we have to look at this as a whole. We have to have a holistic approach to the paranormal if we're really going to understand what's going on, because I feel genuinely that it's all interconnected in such a way that it's probably better to look at it as, the gestalt of the whole thing rather than try to pull it apart. And so many people who research this, they already go in with a, preconceived assumption of what is going on in the world. So if they get a Bigfoot report that involves something paranormal, they'll throw it out. Same way with UFO reports. So it's very good to look at it the way you folks are looking at it, because if we are going to go in there already making up our mind what we're looking for, it's always going to remain elusive. It's always going to be out of our grasp.
Yeah, it's definitely, if like you said, I try to use as much technology as is available, and but again, it's the mentors that we have in our group. As our boy just said in here that he loves that shirt, that
All right. Well,
PBS
What's
shirt,
up, Eric?
well,
and
this is an interesting story, and I will tell you, and this plays a lot on it as well too. And Eric actually got a chance to meet my mother. As a matter of fact, he got a chance to meet her. So I I had an interest in Bigfoot uh, all my life, as I talked about, but it wasn't until I was in graduate school that I started to have experiences. And we lived up in Indiana, Pennsylvania. You can still see the Chestnut Ridge out in the distance, but we weren't technically within the Chestnut Ridge. But our home bordered a college property, so it was a protected site, maybe a few hundred acres, something like that. But it was weird. Anyhow, every summer we would hear between the hours of 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning this whoop sound, a sound that I had never heard before. I wasn't much of an outdoorsman at the time. I didn't know if it was a bird or whatever, but it was always between the hours of 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And it never happened whenever it rained. It was like one of these really weird types of situations. And this went on for an entire year. The next year this happened, and again, this whoop, whoop sound. And I said to my brother, I said, we are going to go investigate this. We're both men in our 20s. We're very fit and everything like that. Let's go out and find out what this is. And sure enough, it was probably I'm thinking about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We hear this whoop sound. I said, well, this is it, David. That's my brother. This is it. We're going to go out and find out what this is. So he grabbed a baseball bat and I grabbed a sword, because you have to have the obligatory sword in these kind of stories.
yep,
And we went outside. And as soon as we went out on the porch, you could feel the vibration of that whoop inside you. Like, it was far different from being inside. Like, once you stepped out on the porch, it was as if there was a vibrational frequency there. And it made us stop, and kind of reconsider what we were doing. We thought, no, 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 we're going to find out what's going on. So we went around the side of our house, and there was a little grove back there that would eventually lead up to the college property. And whatever was making that sound was coming from that grove. We could not see it, but we knew that in those shadows, that's where that creature was. So we start approaching into this thicket a little bit more and more, and the thing is still making the whooping sound, but at the same time, it's starting to snarl, it's starting to growl, and you could hear it bringing in the oxygen to make that snarl. It was very, you know, it was really in the chest. You could hear it was guttural as well too, but you could hear it taking in the air. And not only was it taking in the air, there was a wetness sound to it as well too. I mean, that's how that experience has stuck with me to this day. I can still hear that kind of gargling sound it made whenever it had the growl, but it was still whoop whoop with a growl attached to it as well too. So my brother and I, we immediately ran back to the house. There's no way we're dealing with this kind of thing, and it was never seen or heard from again. It just never happened again. And I was started to ask some people around the neighborhood, have you ever had any experience with this? And this one lady was working in her garden and she said, no, no. And then she continued in her garden. And then we were starting to walk away. But there was this one time there was a guy going through my garbage at night. So it was like one of these kind of strange things. So I go back home and I get on the internet, and the internet is basically in its infancy at this point. This isn't anything big. So I type in PA Bigfoot. Only one site came up, and that was the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. You can imagine if you would type that now, what would come up,
Yeah.
So I immediately got in touch with Eric Ullman, and he called me back, and he was very genuine. And if I'm not mistaken, this instance was the first instance he investigated.
Right there's
Yep.
your confirmation.
Yep. And it's been since that time that now my idea of going out into the field and doing research without that particular incident and without Eric showing me the kind of care that he showed me in regard to what I had to say, I would not be here talking with you guys to this day.
Well, that's kind of the reason that I'm still here.
Yep.
Steve dragged me into it, and my first event was the big one was at Eric's camping event. And that's where I heard my first whoop was right down on the ridge.
Yep.
Talking to JB, and that was a crazy, crazy day,
Right.
and then finding a print a few minutes later after that. So
Sure.
yeah, I guess he's got a connection to us all in that wonderful little corner of Twilight Zone there, and
It
the
is
ridge.
absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, these are the kind of things that really help as an investigator because you get to see so many different sides and so many techniques that people employ. And I'm a better person because of my friendship with Eric. But I remember one of the very first outings that I went on was with Eric and his team, and there was a gentleman that was part of, and his name escapes me, but he had a psychic outlook towards this creature, and of course at this time I was one of those guys that was saying this is a flesh and blood creature. I was in the North American great ape category, but that gentleman who was researching with the idea that there was a psychic connection there in mind really allowed me to expand my outlook on things. And ever since that time, I'm looking at the world with I'm not having any preconceived, assumptions about what's going on. I'm looking at it with a very, very open mind.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. The more work we do in these fields, no matter what our specialty, quote unquote,
Right.
Without a better way to say that, is I think the more of an open mind you have, the better, because I truly believe we all are connected, or everything is connected in some
Right.
way. We overlap in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter.
I agree with what.
And the more we
we're
do
all
this work, the more I find that.
Yeah, the part of the human family and the idea of vibrational frequencies. Back at the time, that instant, that encounter really had. It didn't make any kind of sense to me, but now that I've been getting into the theories of infrasound, it really does come, almost full circle. Because if I put myself back there in those shoes of that 20-year-old kid that's outside hearing these whoops going on, that is a way to be territorial without confrontational. So you're
Right.
able to stay elusive, you're able to stay hidden, and you're just, you're forming your own territory through sound alone, and that's very effective. And if we're dealing with a creature that is self-aware and capable of interacting in the environment with these types of frequencies, it's no wonder that they're still staying hidden.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from the audience, from my eyes. Let's put that up. Ron, have you experienced orbs in the woods? I have experienced my first and only, and have been searching for the answers.
Yes. Yeah.
No, you're muted, right?
Yeah, but I'm going
You can
across
still
your
hear.
microphone.
Okay, just want to make sure because some people couldn't hear us doing that earlier. So I guess the whole unmute thing goes out the window tonight, right? No competition.
Yep.
Well, absolutely. So I will tell you, I was again. So after the this encounter with the whoops going on, I made it kind of my mission to explore and investigate the woods from which these sounds emanated. And I was in these woods with my brother and a buddy of ours, and we saw a red light on the horizon, which we simply assumed was a plane. So if you would hold your thumb out at arm's distance, it probably appeared to be about that size, moving on the horizon, until it started to go in front of the trees. So what we thought was in the horizon was actually quite close to us. We just assume, I mean, our brain sees a light and we're trying to make sense of it. So we just assumed that it was a plane. But then that light starts going in between trees. And we were on a Bigfoot investigation, and these are the strange things that happen. And many, many times I've experienced lights that appear almost like LED lights, different colors at times as well. So if I was on a ghost investigation, I would say, you know what, I got some orbs, fantastic proof of some orbs here. But what are you talking about whenever it's out in the woods and you're looking for Bigfoot, And again, like we talked about earlier, is this idea that these things they're not associated with just one phenomenon. There's something more going on there. There's some connection to all of this stuff.
From my eyes, mine was in front of the trees, 10 foot. My dog was barking at them. They were blue.
Yes, and I have seen. Yep,
you hear
blue.
that a lot.
Yeah.
Blue.
And the idea of these like blue and red and even orange lights, sometimes you could say, okay, it was fireflies, or you could say it was some sort of bioluminescent animal. That's a possibility. But whenever it starts coming at you in a rainbow of colors, that's a hard thing to discuss, because again, if we're looking at the scientific method, we have to look to see if there's any precedence in the field in biology. And although we do have bioluminescence, we don't have anything interacting with human beings on this level anywhere else, unless we're dealing with the paranormal.
I was going to say, so if you look at it from a paranormal standpoint, and you're going to look at symbolism of color, the colors have their own meanings and symbolize different things, especially with the shade of the color. There's a dark blue, there's a light blue, royal blue, things like that. Red, deep red, dark red, bright red, yellow, right. Same thing. So, looking at it from that color, it's almost as if, or looking at it from that kind of perspective, you could say, wow, I saw this blue. Well, a certain blue actually represents a liberation from worry. So it's almost like maybe they're representing and saying, hey, we know you're here. You don't have to worry about us. Or if it's a red and it's the right kind of red, it's anger and maybe it's on the defensive. So you could spin it and look at it that way too.
Wow.
Very
with
all the different meanings. Yeah.
Yeah. And I never thought about that until you brought that up there right now. But I guess also you could also think about the idea of chakras as well too. These colors just do not come up randomly, right? There's a meaning behind this stuff. So
even aura.
Yep.
Or you could be picking up on the aura, the color of the aura.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because that's your energy field, and it goes way out.
We need to do an investigation together, guys.
Well,
absolutely.
I mean, we're only 5 hours apart.
Yeah. Because I think that this would be a really cool thing to do, to bring all these kind of multidisciplinary aspects into the field.
And Paul, I know you're listening because you text me. You can get in the car and we'll go.
That's right.
That's the scientist. So, and that's the first set of orbs I saw in the woods was down on the ridge, and that was with Eric and with Steve. Unfortunately, the camera that I was using that night was super crappy, and but you can hear us going, "What the hell is that?" And I thought it was a helicopter, and then it was down low, and then it was over, and then the next night, just before we heard the scream there at the event, some little kid said, "Hey, that's there," and that's an interesting point because somebody brought up, fairy lights and stuff like that. You've done the research into the fairies as well. I mean, did you see any of this stuff or find any of that stuff when you're doing your research for your fairy books?
Oh, yeah, the fairy book was accumulation of really all of my research, and it's a hard thing to talk to whenever I do interviews, because a lot of people aren't open minded about it. So if you say, you know what, I espouse the belief in fairies, they're immediately going to look at you weird because they're automatically thinking of Tinkerbell. And that has been in our imagination since the Victorian period. The Victorians ruined fairies for us. J.R.R. Tolkien wanted to have his elves in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit to be fairies, but he was afraid of the way the Victorians had ruined them so badly. So he had to call them elves because he doesn't want to have that connotation. Um, I have researched so many different things, from Bigfoot and Dogman and ghosts and all these other things, to the point that I'm getting to think that, are we really looking for all these different entities, creatures, phenomenon, or is there one source behind it all? And if there is this one source behind it all, why could it not be an elemental force, something that's always been here in the environment, something that's always been with us? And we talk about vibrations and frequencies. That is a hallmark of the elemental world, this idea of vibrations and being in tune with the natural environment. And I think, I have a feeling that we as humanity have been in touch with that residual sound since, the Big Bang or what have you, since it was first set into motion. We've always been in touch with this frequency, but we have chosen to step away from it. We've chosen to step out of it. And now whenever we step into areas like, forests and things, and we start lining up with that vibration frequency again, we start seeing things that we cannot comprehend. But I think that it's, innate within us that we have an understanding of these things. But now, to our modern mind, we call them all kinds of fantastic things like ghosts and boogeyman and everything like that. But I think that we as humanity have always been in tune with that vibrational frequency, and civilization is what really has brought us out of that creative link, and we kind of went off on our own, and that's kind of sad in a way.
Well,
I agree.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's they were just yeah, we got both going there. So all right, I'm muting you. All right. All right. So just recently there was a whole thing on MRIs done on service members with the that had UAS, the UFO sightings and stuff like that. And my buddy sent that to me, and I heard another podcast mention it, that when they looked at the MRIs, the basal ganglia they thought it was a cancer, but it was actually more modified nerve endings. So it'd be interesting to really take a look at more of us that have had these experiences, and I've had a few have done, so I'm gonna reach out to the doc and say, hey, what's going on with that?
That's right. But no, it's odd that you brought that up, because if you would take somebody who goes about into prayer frequently or into meditation frequently, whether it be a Buddhist monk or a Franciscan, friar, what have you, their mind, yep, exactly, it's the same change within their minds as well too. And you hate to go around thinking that somebody's going to call you new age, because that's really not what it is. If it's anything, it's old age. It's part of the creative aspect in which we live. But you know it's just really interesting to me to see, as from a historical perspective, as we go back in time, how closely we were assimilated to the natural world. And then the farther we move on, and the more we decimate the creation around us, the more these things are either becoming more elusive, or a little bit more on the periphery, or maybe non-existent at all. So it's very possible that we have not only killed these things within our collective unconscious, because we have indoctrinated ourselves not to believe in such things, but through our own mismanagement of the world around us, we may have quite killed them off literally as well too.
Well, when we look at even the tonal stuff, when you look at throat singers, you look
Yes.
at didgeridoo, or you look at elk horns, and what that tonal frequency is. A buddy of mine, it's a doctor, does a lot of stuff with hemisync, dual tonal, and it's, and like you said, you're doing research on infrasound. Where do those go? Where do those monks are always meditating at an ohm? Why is that at a certain frequency? And then we look at our friends, like the guys at the Olympic Project, looking at those sounds on a spectrograph. Where are we looking? What are we missing that? Because even if you put two sound waves together, you can produce light once they hit it that, some cancel and some actually make a spark. Mm-hmm. So what are we missing, in that tonal range? I mean, and that's scientific, the beyond my brain capacity. My background's archaeology and anthropology and criminal justice. I can make you stone tools or knife, but
what's interesting about this, though, it does go together, because there is some research now to suggest that places like Stonehenge, if you would have gathered together within there and did rhythmic drumming, that vibration off of the stones could have had an effect on the body, possibly even to be able to cure some sort of diseases, So wouldn't that be something to think of Stonehenge almost as a healing place where people would gather, several times a year? And by extension, we can look at medieval cathedrals. And we think about going into these places where it almost forms some sort of echo chamber, and think about the Gregorian chants that would go on there and how that vibration would just affect everybody within that building, and these are great things that have been lost, or not so much lost, but maybe forgotten, that we really need to kind of re-examine.
I think that there's a lot. I think a lot of it, from my perspective, has to do with the fact that we're always trying to prove things. Mm-hmm. And, I said this on, I don't know if it was another show or someplace, another group, where I feel like there's a big part of things that we're never going to figure out, because we're not meant to figure out, because a lot of it does come down to faith in knowing that there are things that are bigger than us out there, bigger than us on this level, on this plane. And, you have to consider, I agree with you. You have to consider that maybe we are going about all this the wrong way. Maybe we need to flip our perspective and say, we are energy first, because clearly if you can have somebody like me who can connect with somebody who has passed on, I'm not talking to their body, I'm talking to their soul, or what we would call their soul, their energy, their nucleus. But what the nucleus is on a physical level is different than on I'm going to say spiritual level, right? So I feel like we're always trying to prove, which we need to do. But we also need to be accepting that there is another phase of things and another element that is just equally as important in order to really understand what we're trying to understand. And I absolutely agree with, when you come together, those are, when you join forces with energy on whatever level, for whatever reason, you can move mountains. I mean, I had a group, of students a bunch of years back, and just a handful of them showed up that night, which was kind of weird for our regular night. But it wasn't weird. It worked out the way it was supposed to, because one of them ended up having an attachment that I had to confront. And those who showed up had the right strengths that we all needed as individuals to join forces with our gifts to knock this thing out, because we've been trying to figure it out for 2 years. And so it's just joining those forces enabled us to group our energy, which enabled us to overpower this thing and really just knock it out. And so I think you're right. We really need to remember there are other ways of looking at this and other ways of going about it, because we really are energy at the end of the day. That's what we are.
That's right. And think about this for a second, as Mike had said earlier. Think about combining energies, especially if it's for the benefit of other people. That is really kind of what prayer is all about. It's putting this hope out there, this idea out there that we want to care for our fellow man. And you could understand, if enough people would get together, what that vibration might be able to do to this world. And we forgot that, I'm a practicing Catholic, but one of the things that I had written about in one of my book, I said, one of the worst things that ever happened to man is when we made God into our own image. I think that's the worst thing, because at that point he becomes white, or he becomes black. He takes on characteristics of a human being. And that is pigeonholing the divine that's meant for everything. And at that point, you can take ownership of it. Rather than saying the divine is a part of everybody out there, we
Right.
now say we control this. This is my divinity. But
Yeah.
if we would look at the world, at large and say, we're all in this together. We borrow this world from our children. We want to leave them with something, and we want to have goodwill. You put enough of that stuff out there in the world, I promise you, it will change the world. I promise you.
See, and I can
Well,
also say too, sorry, I have a rebuttal to that. No, actually, I have not a rebuttal because I agree with you, but I also feel that it's on some level it is important as human beings. We need to be able to grasp and understand things on this level. Even when I do readings, Spirit will use an example, or our spirit guides will use certain examples. Even with my background as a dental assistant, even so, I understand what the message is. That they'll refer to things that I'll understand, so I can better relay or properly relay a message. And I feel like we need that on a certain level. But as mediums, we are taught and we are responsible for keeping our ego in check. So that's where I feel like we should be able to, because we're human and that's how we function, right? We need to be able to make sense of things on a certain level, but we also have to remember we can't own it. It has
That's
to
right.
just be something that we work with. So I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's the balance that we always are missing, because the scales are always tipped in one way or another. Right. And it's
Yep.
so hard as human beings, but I feel like it's part of our free will, which is so important for our ascension and our, raising our vibration and achieving our goals in this life,
Sure,
that we're,
sure.
the things we're supposed to do. So I love that. I love that perspective that you shared. Yeah.
Brian or Shannon, if you guys are watching tonight, if you guys can send me the biofield imager footage from Stonehenge, I'd appreciate it.
Oh,
I have
nice.
friends who've got pictures of the rocks, but if you use a biofield imager, for some reason you can see through that blue stone. And I don't have because we're remote, I don't have that thumb drive with me with those photos.
Right.
But if you ever get to play with a biofield imager, and we have 2 loose members of the team that have these things that actually show your aura, and you can
Yes,
see.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a nice little piece of equipment, but they're not cheap, so I don't have one.
Can we talk a little more about the fairies before we take a break? Because I feel like that's fascinating, and I feel like we haven't really touched on that in this on our show yet.
No.
Listen, no, we can't, or no, we haven't touched on it yet.
No, we have not touched on it.
I was about to get my whip out, and
Then the show would get really interesting.
right?
Yeah.
We'll get banned.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, but I think it's fascinating because and it's actually the newest thing that I am becoming drawn to, if that makes sense. I have my focuses, and when they want me to, when it's time for me to start looking in other directions, I feel drawn in that direction or pulled in that direction. And over the last 6 months or so, fairies are catching my attention. So there's got to be a reason. So I'm just fascinated to learn more about what you know and what you've experienced. And
Yeah, this is definitely just a premonition of our research that we're going to be conducting here in a few months, because this is my thing as well too. Get us out into a location and let's look at it from a fairy perspective a little bit as well too. But when we talked about Stonehenge, and I'm a huge fan of anthropology and archaeology, but you start seeing these kind of images from Newgrange, which predates the pyramids, in Salisbury Plain as well too, with Stonehenge, and even with the medicine wheel in the Midwest of the United States. These circular patterns that we keep on seeing reverberating again and again, whether it means completion or whether it's something else, but it's interesting to think that the idea of crop circles even can be linked back to fairy circles. Whenever people would experience these things in antiquity, they would see these circles of mushrooms usually, or sometimes it was just grass that was laid down in circular fashion, and this was a sign that there was fairy energy about. Now, my idea is that one of the reasons why we have so many circular structures around the world, like Avebury, even in places in northern Scotland, places in France, are those areas possibly a commemoration of some sort of interactivity that the human beings have had with fairies. And the reason why we make them circular is because that is how it was brought up to us. So then we could talk about the ideas of portals as well too, where things opening up. Are these ways into another world? Because that was also a hallmark of fairy lore, that these fairy circles were ways in and out between our world and the world of the fae. So these are some of the ideas that I'm having right now. But fairies would often show themselves as light. Sometimes they would show themselves as vibrational frequencies. The author of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, said fairies do not have wings. What people see is the vibration from them interacting in the world around them that people think are wings. But and also to throw another one at you as well too, C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, he claimed that he spent a night in a home that was both fairy haunted and haunted by ghosts, and he said the fairies were far worse. But yeah, and but even looking at things like the wild man, we have the gray man in Scotland, we have the Yorkshire giant. We talked before the show began, Mike, about even the Stonish giant, and so these giants are showing up around the world as well too. The idea of shape shifting is part of the fairy vernacular as well too.
Oh.
So is it possible people are seeing these giant creatures out in the wild that we call Bigfoot, and people are hearing these sounds, but nobody is getting any kind of conclusive evidence photographically from these things because they are not physically there? That somehow these sounds and these vibrations will manifest something within our mind to make us believe that something's there, but it's really not. If that is the case, then these elemental creatures that we would now call fairies could be responsible for almost anything that we talk about. And one more thing about the idea of UFO abductions. Robert Kirk, in his writings on the Commonwealth of the Fairies, he was from Stirlingshire in Scotland. He claimed that he went out one night, and on the side of the hill there was a light emanating from inside the hill. It looked like a door was open. Now, in the 21st century, we would say that sounds like a typical UFO encounter. But he goes into the light, and inside this mound, he sees a very tall, very beautiful looking human being, which people would call the Nordics or whatever. And there were other creatures in there as well too that would have some sort of relation to the Greys as well. But in that encounter, he said this was entering into the fairy world. But in our world, because we are kind of educated out of those kind of superstitions, and because we live in a mechanized and a computerized world, we now see this as something far different. So that is what I'm going with, folks. This is like as my research is going on now. These are the kind of things that I'm looking at. That maybe we're not dealing with extraterrestrials. Maybe we're not dealing with Bigfoot. Maybe we're dealing with something like an ultra terrestrial, something that has been here, something that is able to interact with us, and for the good and for the bad.
That's awesome. So we have to take a commercial break in a minute, but do you want another reading first?
Yes.
And boy, did Matt call me out right in the chat too. He learned my tells real fast, didn't he?
Yeah. Hold my beer, Gimbal.
I had to bite my tongue to not say Gimbal in the middle of what you're talking.
Matt's our friend from Central Florida Bigfoot.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
A photographer, and he got me hooked on gimbals. And anytime we say gimbal, we have to drink because
we said it so much in the one conversation.
Right. Yeah, thank God for water.
So truly it was fascinating. I would love to learn more about it, and I would love to be out with you sometime. You actually conduct some of that research. I would love to, because I feel like it's my new next step or next thing. At least that's the way I'm feeling it.
The science team's been blowing up my phone.
So your father's passed away also, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So he's next.
Okay.
So I don't know if you saw, I messaged a little while ago. Oh, I'm getting the chills right in the middle of my upper back right now. Like somebody's touching me. He likes to play with hair, doesn't he? Your father?
You know what? I'm not going to say anything, but Look,
Oh no,
if
he's
if
frozen.
I
Validation.
if I had passed over and I was there, I'd probably be playing with your hair as well too.
Well, thank you. But I'm gonna say that even though it's long, I chopped it, so I have the invert going on. So there's no hair back here right now.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I kept like touching. You'll see in the chat room. I don't know what time it was, but I messaged and said someone keeps touching the back of my neck, like they were playing with my hair, like it's gone. So, chocolate pudding,
842.
842. Thank you. Pudding, chocolate pudding.
Yep. Yep.
How do you
Yep.
connect with that?
No. That's absolutely that. My dad had a sweet tooth, definitely.
Thank you. I also felt my jaw like I was not clenching, but I actually felt like I had a a TMJ issue. It got real tight and it hurt my TMJ in here. How do you connect with that?
Um, it could come down to a couple of things. I won't tell you how my father passed away or anything like that. But I think whenever I do reveal it,
I'll tell you.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Mm.
I saw him grabbing his chest.
Hmm.
He grabbed his chest. I also got a pain in my shoulder and my arm. So he had he had a heart issue or he had issues with his heart.
Yeah, he did have issues with his heart. Absolutely. He actually had one lung that was working. He lived a very difficult life of working in, a lot of environmental
Hold
hazards.
on.
Okay.
Hold on. Because the other thing I have written here, I have a bunch of notes written. Matt was right on me when he saw me doing this. I saw overalls. And when they show me overalls, that's their way of letting me know that he was a working man.
Oh, yes.
He worked with his hands. He was hands on. He was out there doing whatever. So there you go. So yeah.
Yep,
And
that's
then
right. That's right.
I did see him grab his chest.
Mhm.
But he is telling me that's not how he died. But he's grabbing his chest. And again, he is also the way he's communicating with me tells me he probably could not talk or communicate effectively or at all at the time of his passing. Is that correct?
100%. Yes.
Thank you. And I'm going to say too, because I felt the lower back earlier when I was connecting with your mom, that was your dad's way of letting me know that he was here because when someone has a heart issue and it's cardiopulmonary, it's up here for me, which I was getting with the breathing on and off, but he made his presence known by giving me the pain in my back or in my lower lungs. So he's been here the whole time. He just decided to step forward now when he did. So, something about his hands. He's saying something about his hands.
Mm-hmm.
What about his hands?
So whenever he was a teenager, he was riding in a vehicle with his buddy, and he actually went through the windshield during an accident. And his one hand, his left hand, was actually totally useless. He could do nothing with it. It cut the tendons and the muscle in it to the point that his hand became atrophied.
So it would cramp up and it would get
really zero use. So you couldn't do anything. Use. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the message for you is, now that we validated your dad, the message is stop questioning yourself, stop doubting yourself. You're doing well. Don't stop. So whatever it is that you're doing in your life right now and you're not sure of it, cut it out. You're on the right track. You need to keep going. Do not stop, which is what you've been not seriously considering yet, but you're definitely, it's in the back of your head. Maybe I should just stop. Don't stop.
Right.
Okay.
And that's very validation because my father was one of these. He was very reticent. He would not talk. I don't believe that in my entire life I ever heard him say that he loved me. He was one of these kind of working guys. Really. Now with with my children, with his grandchildren, very lovey-dovey. He could let his guard down, but he was one of these guys where he was working around asbestos his entire life. We're thinking about all that kind of stuff, and how he passed away from COVID 2 days before Thanksgiving last year. So this was very new. But but he passed away at 75, and the doctor said that he probably would have been able to live to 85 if it wasn't for the COVID. Very close to my kids, especially my oldest son. I mean, he was like his second dad. Actually, looking back on it, my dad probably did more outdoor stuff with him than I did. So he probably looked at my dad more as his own father than me because he took so much time with him. But that means a lot because you always wonder whenever somebody passes, if they still want that connection with you. You know what I mean? You think
Right.
about that as well, even if it deals with a parent. So that's something that
Mhm.
really does make me feel much, much better.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And he says that in response to when you said that he wasn't the kind of verbalizer, say, I love you. He said to me, what he did try to do, the way he showed his love was by spending his time.
Yes, yes.
He
That's
would,
right.
like, I see him stopping what he's doing, like you as a child going up to him, asking him something or showing him something, and he would stop what he was doing
Right.
and give you that moment or give you that time.
Right. So whenever I wrote the one book that I wrote called the Haunted History of Westmoreland County, he and I went out one summer and just started to investigate all these places. Now he wasn't into the paranormal field at all whatsoever, and he really enjoyed that. So that book I dedicated to him. And when we would
That's
do things
awesome.
like down in Kecksburg at the Kecksburg event, he would come up on Fridays, and I'm going to miss him because the Kecksburg event has been canceled for the past 2 years, but it will be on this year. But he would always come up on Fridays because that was the short day, and he would come and sit at the table with me. And he always enjoyed that because he would run into people that he knew, and then it wasn't so much that his son was weird in that perspective, is because people were there for the reason of what I had to talk about. So it was good. It was good.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I do agree with
Aw.
what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm so glad. All right. Thank you for that. All right, Michael, do you think we should take a break and give these people a potty break and a drink break?
Yes. So we're going to click on the right thing. So we're going to take the quick commercial. And where's my commercial? There's my commercial. So we'll be right back. So run to the bathroom, grab something to drink, and we'll be right back.
WLFE-DB.com, where you can find vodcast shows, podcasts, and more, like Where's My Sage, Inside the Drag Closet, Across the Pond, Paratalk Radio, Just Cindy, and more. So go check out WLFE-DB.com, where talk radio is a whole lot better. Our shows are your shows, and that there makes for a great talk radio.
Hey guys and dolls, this is Casey DeVille, the better half of DeVille Inc., Baltimore, Maryland. If you're ever in Baltimore, stop in and see me and Tony. Invisible Bree, 5920 Eastern Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland, 21224. Give us a call if you're in the area, 410-400-9641, or look us up on the web at DeVilleInc.com. DeVille Inc., where we specialize in you.
Ted Van Son Jr. is a seasoned investigator and well-versed in the ways of paranormal investigation. He is now ready to share his ideas and unique approach with all of you. Flashlight, recorder, and comfortable shoes. Hit the ground running as you follow this easy step-by-step guide to a fun and thorough paranormal investigation, perfect for first-time and lightly seasoned investigators. Think outside the paranormal box. Learn all about the technology and techniques used back in the early days of paranormal investigation. You can find these valuable resources online at Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Amazon. Get yours today.
Hi, I'm Jenna Grover. In the world of fashion, we get lost in the cost. Everyone wants that special piece of quality jewelry, but they can't afford it. Not on my watch. I sell handmade quality jewelry for a fraction of the price, and that includes jewelry made of sea glass, natural stone, crystal beads, glass beads, Bigfoot jewelry, and more. If you don't see what you want, email me, because I make custom jewelry too. Check out my website at gbythesea.com. Also, you can email me at jewelry@gbythesea.com.
You're listening to WLFE DB Radio. Now, back to our program.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And I unmuted myself, and she decided to mute herself at the same time. So we got a little echo. So we're just going to run off of Christy's microphone for tonight. So our guest will be back in a second. We're talking to Ron Murphy tonight, and we're talking everything from Bigfoot to paranormal to fairies to Dogman. So
And deeper,
great.
and
Yes,
deeper,
we're going
spiritual
We're not
connections, auras, colors, symbolism. Come on, get it all in there.
Yep. Yeah, we do have an echo. We are live from Paranormal Oddities tonight.
And we're 2 feet away from each other.
And as you can see, Christy's face there behind her, she's doing a live gallery reading tomorrow. So we'll be back here tomorrow and she'll be doing that live reading. So there's still tickets available. Paranormal.
All right. Why did you just mute yourself?
I tried to unmute you and it didn't work.
Yeah. Okay. So we're live again at Paranormal Oddities. You can get tickets through them for Christie's gallery reading or come here to the door. So we're waiting for Ron to come back. Again, this is the first location we ever did a live at. We were 2 different rooms that night, so we didn't quite get so many crazy things. Yes, we are at Joe's, Michelle. Yeah, we did lose audio because we keep fighting with whose microphone we're using because we're sitting across the table from each other. Because I wanted just to use one tonight.
Trying to maneuver as flawlessly as we can.
Yes. So usually we don't have this problem, but tonight we're going to try. Let's see, we're going to throw that towards her so you guys can hear her a little bit better.
Do you have the slide? Put it up so everyone can see it for the show tomorrow night.
No, I have to go find the slide, so give me 1 second and I will go do that.
I put it in the drive for you if you didn't get it ready.
Our guest is coming back while you're doing that. I will go ahead and
back.
pull that slide up, or we'll just run my camera over there and take a picture and put it right in. So let me bring Ron back into things. We aren't doing readings tonight, but we are talking some crazy stuff. But Christy keeps getting readings for Ron, and welcome back, Ron.
Hello. I had to stop and get myself a grape crush.
Oh, my favorite.
I'm telling
soda.
you, if I would ever get to the point where they would ask me to do endorsements, it would be for Grape Crush.
Yeah, Grape Crush or Tactical Squatch Black Rifle Coffee. That's
absolutely. I love the Black Rifle Coffee.
So that's, we're not sponsored by them, but man, do I love support those guys.
Bring it on. Absolutely.
So
when I'm in the field, I don't go anywhere without my Grape Crush.
It's great plug.
Yeah.
Grape Ape. We'll make sure we have the Grape Crush.
Oh, even better. You are just you should go on Shark Tank because you're just a mountain of ideas here.
Oh, I have lots of great ideas. I just never follow them for myself. Or I'd be a billionaire. I've given people more ideas over the years than I don't even know what to do with. So
yes.
So, Dogman. Yes. I'm not a big believer, but you've done some research.
I have.
And you're down in Pennsylvania where we got the lichen loop.
We do have the lichen loop here. That's right.
So let's have your thoughts and theory because Pennsylvania's Bigfoot, but now we have Dogman in there. How do they cross? How do they come in? How does it go back to folklore in Pennsylvania?
All right. So this is going to take some time, but I'm going to connect some dots and it's going to be awesome. So the first time I went out on an expedition was with Eric Altman. I told you about the people that we had with the that was having a psychic connection with Bigfoot as well too. We went on an investigation with Sam Sherry. Have you guys ever heard of Sam Sherry before?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't think we've crossed paths.
Yeah, he was an older gentleman. I believe it was in about 1984 that he claims that he had an encounter along the Loyalhanna River in the Chestnut Ridge with a creature that would go on to be called Bigfoot, but it didn't seem to be like a Bigfoot if you look at his description. He was fishing at night. He heard a sound across the river. Whenever he turned to go back to his car, he turned around and this creature was standing right beside him. So it wasn't working within the realm of physics. Let's put it that way. And its skin wasn't hair covered. It had this very leathery skin and it had what he called a mohawk. So it looked like something very, otherworldly, but not necessarily a Bigfoot. But people caught on and people would call it Bigfoot because there was really nothing else to call it at that time. But he felt that it had a sense of wanting to communicate with him, and but he got out of there. He reported it. He was really upset that he was being ridiculed so much. So he spent the rest of his life trying to find proof that these things were out there. So he would take barbed wire and put them around a tree with an apple, hoping that he would get a piece of hair or a piece of blood or whatever from it. But it was on this encounter, I'm sorry, it was on this investigation with Eric Altman that we went out with Sam Sherry, and he was showing some of the places where he had Bigfoot encounters, and we were out in the middle of nowhere on the Chestnut Ridge, and I was talking to him, and he said, in my investigations, there's two types of Bigfoot out there. He said one is the very gentle giant. Whenever you think of Bigfoot, this is the quintessential Bigfoot. But he said I also encountered another type of Bigfoot out there as well too, and I had never heard anything about speciation before regarding Bigfoot. But he said this one is a much more thinner than the Bigfoot that you would think of. Um, it has a protruding snout, and it hunts in packs. Now, this was, I believe, in 1998, 1999, and I did not have Dogman in my vernacular. So the only thing you could call it would be a werewolf, right? I mean, that's the only thing. But Sam Sherry saw this as part of the Bigfoot family. And I think if this is indeed a flesh and blood animal, that might be what's going on. Whether it's a different species or Bigfoot has been misidentified as a dogman or dogman misidentified as a Bigfoot, what have you. But for somebody that has been out in the field for years, this was Mr. Sherry's conclusion that in the Chestnut Ridge of Western Pennsylvania, there were two types of Bigfoot. Okay, so then I started to do a lot of research, and I found out that in the Ohio River Valley, not very far from here, there were several Native American indigenous groups that had wolf cults. To the point that they would take a human figure and disarticulate it to make it appear as if it was in the process of transformation into an animal. There was one particular site that borders Tennessee and Kentucky where the people that were doing the burial had to remove the lower jaw in order for this wolf jaw to be able to fit onto the body. So if you would disinter the body, it would appear as if this was a person with animalistic qualities as well too. Okay, and they would go as far as wrapping the body in furs, so it was very hard to differentiate between man and beast. Okay, that kind of a thing. But then you keep on, like I said, you keep on connecting the dots, and then you find out in this particular area would soon become known as land between the lakes, that has a lot of dogman sightings down there as well too. So whenever you start looking at this stuff and you start, like I said, connecting the dots, even up in around the Great Lakes region, there are a lot of Indian effigy mounds up there. And these dogmen, or these spirit animals, have long been thought to be tutelary spirits that would protect sacred Native American Indian sites. Not only do they protect sacred Native American Indian site burial sites, but if you would go back into the distant past and think of Anubis in the Egyptian religion, he also was tied to funerary sites. So there's something going on here. There's something going on here about the idea of a dog man. It's something that's able to transform, that pertains to burials, that crosses time and space. So what we would use in this particular field, at least from a sociological point of view, is we would call these creatures, we would define them as psychopompous, something that is able to take the soul of the living and carry it over or be the guardian into the afterlife. You could view them as this if you don't want to take on a flesh and blood perspective, but whatever is going on here, like I said, very dissimilar cultures around the world, separated by a vast time and space, have been seeing these these man wolf creatures, to be part of the at least the funerary rituals of different cultures.
Would you think they're almost like the tulpas, where we're self-manifesting them?
That's a great point of view. You could think from just a purely human level that what would happen whenever you would bury your loved ones is that invariably these dogs, these wolves would come and dig them up so they could eat them, eat them as carrion. So it might be better for the human being to think that it's conveying the soul of your loved one rather than eating its remains. That's a very logical way of looking at it. I think that is probably what's going on in more cases than not. So whenever we think that there is a wolf guarding this particular area, the reason why wolves would accumulate in that area is because food would be very easy to get. You just wait till the body's interred at night and you dig it up. And that's probably definitely what was happening over in Egypt as well, too. And they just simply became deified. They were so feared that they became deified, if that makes any sense. And that happens a lot. People are afraid of things, so they personify them into something. So if you personify something, you can at least appease it and deal with it at that point. Now, that is not to say that the idea of a dogman or a werewolf does not exist, because if you look throughout history, you most certainly know that they exist. The Beast of Bedburg, or the Werewolf of Bedburg in Germany, this was in the 1500s. It was a man who claimed that he received a charmed belt given to him by Satan himself. Whoops, hold on one second, guys. My camera just went out. I just saw that. Okay, hold on one second here. This would suck if it doesn't go back on, because I like to talk with my hands. I don't know why. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. Yeah, I'm not sure why that happened. That is a weird little.
Nothing's weird around
Let
here.
me pull you out, and I'll pull you back in. See if that works.
That works. No, it did not work.
Okay.
Wow.
He may have to leave the
That's
studio.
your mic setting.
Come back.
Yeah, pull yourself out, bring yourself back in again, and.
All right. Let me see. Let me go do this, guys. I'm gonna go. I'll be right back here. I'll be right back.
Okay. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up. This is for Christy's show tomorrow night. There's the information. So tomorrow night here at the venue at Paranormal Oddities, there's down at the bottom is the address here on Transit Road in Depew. The number is there. The price is there. Christy's going to be on, and hopefully Ron will be back. There he is. We'll bring him back. We're going to drop that. We're going to bring him back into the feed. There we go.
Hey, I just had to turn off my external camera, so I'm just going to go with this camera if that's okay.
Wow. Right. Yeah, that works great.
Perfect.
I have a quick question about something you said earlier too, because I always wonder this myself, and I know there's like a lag and an echo with me. Sorry. Should we switch mics?
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about Dogman, fairies, Sasquatch, really anything? Being the debate's always: is it real? Is it living, breathing? Is it tangible? Mm-hmm. What if it is, but not on this plane? And when we see it, we're seeing it jump. Because I always go back to this. If I can remote view, if I can astral project, why can't they? Mm-hmm. So that's always the big thing. Why are we not finding all of this? Well, I hate hearing myself. Why can't that be a possibility? We're not finding anything, or we don't always find it. That's a big piece of the puzzle that doesn't make sense. If they're congregating, if they're in herds or in their groups, why are we not finding more of nests or, living situations, environments, or whatever?
Right. It seems as if they, for lack of a better word, they infringe upon our reality. And every now and then we seep into their reality too, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I like to look at this, and I often describe my reasoning on this as looking like layers of an onion. So you take off a layer and there's another layer, but sometimes those layers are so thin they become transparent so you can see through them, okay? So maybe not only can you see through them, but possibly step through them as well too. So that's the reason why whenever you look at ancient cultures from around the world, which is very interesting because not only do the Celtic cultures of Europe have this, but also the cultures of Asia, they see certain types of year as whenever the spirit world or the fairy realm is allowed to interact with our realm. And October 31st, that is something that's equated not only to the Celts but also to some Asian cultures as well too. Also, midsummer, that's always been a magical time. It's very probable, let's put it this way, that people that are agriculturally associated with the land and they need to depend upon the world around them to live, not like us going to the grocery store, but they need to know whenever the herds are going to be moving, whenever the animals are going to be having babies, whenever it's okay to plant. They are so intrinsically tied to the world around them that it's much more real. There's much more reality there, okay? And not only is there reality there, but they can see things that we have long forgot. And is it possible that whenever they say that these certain types of the year, whether they're solstices or cross quarters, that these are the time whenever things can come through? Are they really pointing out a time whenever everything just lines up to the perfect storm and these doorways kind of open up and allow things in and out? I have to I have to say there's more than just coincidence going on there. Let's put it that way. I don't want to go out and say immediately that I do believe that portals are opening up on June 21st. But I will tell you this. I would think that if you and if we're going to do an investigation together to get as close to the summer solstice as humanly possible, because even Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, this is whenever the fairies come out to play. You know what I mean? And I like this idea. I like this idea very, very much. But I think that there is the idea of maybe not two distinct and separate worlds, but two worlds that are layered up on top of each other, that every now and then something can cross in between them.
Awesome.
I like that.
So we got a question from the audience, and it's from Jean. What is your definition of a fairy?
So I have looked into this for a while whenever I was writing my book. So the word fairy actually means something from the world of the Fae. So it's kind of like a circular logic to it. It really doesn't have any meaning other than if you call a fairy, what does it mean? Well, it means a fairy, that kind of thing. It doesn't, it's that circular type of debate. It means itself. So you have to look into some really ancient writings. So when we talk about the Celts, they came up with a word called the Tua de Danann, the people of the dawn, or the people of the other world. There's different ways to decipher it, but their idea was there was a race of people here before mankind, and these are kind of like the heroes of legend, if you will. If you look at the Lord of the Rings, it's kind of like that before the race of man type of thing, because Tolkien draws a lot upon these kind of elements as well too. But the Celts believed that there was a race of people here before we came along, and then humanity finally did come onto the scene, and we drove them into myth and legend. We finally, whether we killed them off, or drove them away. But there's always been a thought that there was another race here, very similar to who we are, but so different that we had to destroy them. And look, as it's showing out right now, if you would go back 200,000 years, anatomically modern humans shared this world with at least 4 or 5 different, sapient groups. So it's very possible that this is a cultural remembrance of what we had to go through in ancient history.
So when you did your research, your books, and you guys are out checking, the ridge and the loop and that kind of thing, are you finding those Pleiadian structures in the area, or those burial mounds, like the serpent mounds out west, or stuff in that area? I probably should do more research on Kecksburg. I mean, I know that that's where the Eggcorn is and such, but it's, are you finding stuff like that? Are you finding more pre-Indian cultures where you're finding some of these historical locations?
Right. So that's a great question. So what happens is, as the woodland Indians kind of develop into demarcated societies or demarcated groupings, like you would have the Adena people, you would have the Hopewellian people, and eventually you would have this all culminated in the Great Society of the Mississippian people. Right. So you have this kind of evolution of the woodland culture out of a very archaic hunter-gatherer society to a more sentient type of society, or a more sedentary type of society, I should say, that would culminate with like Cahokia, if you would think, in Carbondale, Illinois, which was a great city from the Mississippian period that was actually larger than contemporary London was at the time. This was a great trading route. Here in Cahokia, you could find shells from the Gulf Coast. You could have alligator teeth. So you had an extensive amount of travel and trade going on there. Okay, so these are all these cultures here, and they have some fantastic effigy mounds and fantastic mounds that have been preserved. Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, we have half of a mound that has been preserved, and that is in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. Um, I have interviewed people, and they had talked to me about whenever their grandparents would buy land, they would come across these burial mounds. And one lady told me how her grandfather told her the story that they would take the plow and would actually bring up Native American skulls and things like that. We didn't care much about the past. We destroyed almost everything. Some places, especially if you move out farther west, you had a little bit of an educated foresight whenever you came into the land. But these original colonies around here, these very old colonies, this was all about conquest, and this was about expansion, and this was about making arable farmland rather than, documenting any kind of ancient civilization. So you would think about the amount of information that has been wasted. But sure, absolutely, Western Pennsylvania would have been a site for these woodland cultures. It would have been a site for these mound building cultures. But because we only have half of a mound that survives, because everything else just they didn't care about it anymore. I'm sure there's plenty out there that have not been found. If you look at archaeology, especially whenever you go to the Levant section, you would the Levant section of the world, you would see things they would call tells. They look like these hills that have been grown over. And I think that if you would go into the landscape of Western Pennsylvania, you can see these mounds throughout that are covered with trees that probably do have some sort of archaeological significance to them, if people would take the time. But for whatever reason, there's not people doing a lot of research on this stuff.
Okay. I just didn't know if maybe you'd come across, sightings or history in those areas. And, and I maybe can get together and, we can pull, the nice thing is there's a lot of LiDAR stuff that's
yes, absolutely.
Look at some of those
Yeah.
locations. And look at historical maps and stuff.
Absolutely. But whenever I was in graduate school, I had got permission to look at the Serpent Mound in Chillicothe, Ohio, after dark. I got to go up there as the sun was setting. And whenever people talk about the alignments of certain types of stars, or whenever people talk about just the feeling that one gets up there, if you would see these things within kind of like their natural element, without any ambient light around or without any kind of human encroachment, it's mind-boggling, and it's staggering, and it's awe-inspiring as well too. It transforms the landscape, but also it's very natural looking as well too, if that makes any sense. But I think that what we have done is we talked about this earlier, we have chosen to take a great bit of knowledge and information and simply cast it aside and destroy it. In our version of a good old-fashioned book burning, we have looked at Native American societies, and we have plowed them over, and all that stuff has been lost now forever.
So quick, kind of take care of a quick thing there.
They're bad tonight.
Yeah.
This is the worst it's ever been.
Yep. Some troll,
We're on.
throwing a.
Hey,
Say some-
it kind of fits though. We're talking about everything else.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across a troll?
No, I had.
I mean, honestly, right?
Yeah. Well, I've had. It's odd because whenever you talk about fairies, you think nobody's ever going to say that they have had any kind of experience with them. But I have had a lot of people that come up to me and tell me that they've had experiences. An elderly gentleman came up to me and said that he had a vacation home on the Chestnut Ridge, and on the porch, he came across what he thought was a very large insect of some kind. But he looked closer, and it was a very diminutive human being that was pressed up against the side of the house so it would go undetected, and it had wings and everything. But he said it was just laying up there at the side of the house, almost as if it doesn't want to be seen. And he said it stayed there for hours until another one came by and they flew off together. Now, this one story came to me probably about 3 years ago, and I did not get a chance to include it in my fairy book because I had already written my fairy book by this time. But there was a gentleman who was taking a walk up on the Chestnut Ridge. There are a few hiking trails up there, but not very many. So it's basically, if you want to go up there, you pull over to the side of the road and you just kind of go for a walk.
Yeah.
And he was doing one of these things. And a lot of people go hunting up there for those morels as well, too, those kind of mushrooms, But he said that he was going for a walk, and he came to this little opening in the woods, and there were two creatures that were kind of like roughhousing. He called them brownies, although brownies tend to mean more of a domicile type of thing, more related to like a home or a particular place. But brownie is kind of used now because of Harry Potter, something that's easily understood. So, but he said these were two brownies that were sitting there wrestling and roughhousing, and he watched it for several moments until one of them noticed him. And then it kind of alerted the other. He said he could not remember if they were wearing clothes or not, but if they were wearing clothes, they were so perfectly camouflaged and with the environment that you couldn't tell if they were wearing clothes. But he said the one noticed him and immediately disappeared into the side of the hill. And he pointed out that there was no hole in the side of the hill, nothing to go into. It just disappeared to the side of the hill. Now, this is when things become creepy. He said the other one, the other brownie, as he called it, went through a series of shapeshifts before it became a very large bird and flew away. So when we think of the Thunderbird legends, I wonder if this has anything to do with that. And as I researched it even more, I found out that in the Wexford area of Ireland, there is a fairy over there that will often take the shape of a very large bird as well. So it does have an antecedent within the imagination of other cultures as well. But so whenever he told me about these things going through shapeshifts, now he didn't tell me what the other changes were, but that's whenever I got to thinking about, well, is it able to shapeshift into a human-looking wolf, or is it able to shapeshift into an 8-foot tall hair-covered creature? This stuff starts making sense at this point. Again, are we looking for one individual type of creature, or are there multiples out there, or are we simply imagining what these things are because they're able to affect our frequency, our mind in such a way that we're seeing these things?
So Gina's got a question. I've not seen one, but someone described something that they saw, like you described, big, humish, and winged.
Yep.
Now, we're friends with a few folks that do a lot of stuff with, Mothman and winged humanoids. Are they coming across that same type of path? And now I want to grab Crush really bad.
Oh, it's a good question. No, whenever I did the Mothman Festival several years ago, I did a talk on winged humanoids throughout creation or throughout history. And if you would go and look at Mesopotamia, many of their gods were representative of having 2 or 4 wings. And they're often seen coming out of some sort of circular type of symbol as well, too. We go back to the idea of these things emerging out of fairy rings or what have you. but this is part of the imagination in a lot of different cultures. These winged humanoids that kind of come into our world from some other place.
Cool. So mermaids, how'd you get hooked on mermaids?
Well, okay.
And I just put a link in the chat for everybody to find your books.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yes. So Amazon link, guys, before I completely forget that housekeeping.
So I wrote my book about the unexplained world of the Chestnut Ridge. That was the first book I ever wrote, and it was time consuming. And whenever I completed it, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to write a book again, because that really does take a lot of time. Research takes a lot of time, talking to people, everything. I was glad that it was over. Let's put it that way. And my daughter Willow came up to me and she said, are mermaids real? She was watching this show called H2O. It was an Australian show, and it's about these mermaids. And she watched, I think, the one summer she was out of school, I think that she watched the entire series about 3 times, just back to back to back. And I said to her, I don't know. I never thought about that. And she said, well, you write about that Bigfoot crap. Do you think you could look into it and see? Yeah. So I decided
Sounds about right.
yeah, sounds about right. So I decided to do a little bit of investigation, and I fell in love with the idea of mermaids. I'd never really given them much thought before. But when we talk about archetypes, they have represented everything from the damnation of man, because they're giving in to their lusts, and they're figuratively being drowned in their passions, to the point of by the time the Renaissance comes around, they're seen as being in a perpetual state of baptism. They come full circle. They come from these seductresses now to these grace-filled types of creatures. But again, whether you go to Africa or you go to Vancouver, even had some mermaid sightings. Wherever you go, these creatures are going to fall under the same rules. They're going to abide by the same rules no matter where you go, and that leads me to consider that there's a suggestion that there is a common element to this, and that common element may mean that we had come in contact with something along these lines. Now, our buddy Paracelsus, the great, he was a little bit of everything. He was an alchemist, but he also did a lot of stuff on mineralogy, and some of the stuff that he discovered still sticks with us to this very day. He actually named zinc, the mineral that we take, zinc, but he also named the gnome, and I'll tell you why. He believed that all nature had a controlling intelligence to it. So in the water, you had the controlling intelligence. The elemental of the water was represented as a mermaid. So that was how you represented that. And of course, the woods, you would have the representation of a hair covered creature. And then, fire was a salamander. So he suggested that all of these elementals would take a form, and that form would represent the intelligent guiding force within that particular element. And he said that he had no problem believing in mermaids whatsoever.
That's interesting.
It is.
Sorry.
It is. Did she just walk off? Did she just get bored
No.
and leave?
I got her checking on something. Like we got really. So the place has its own set of spirits, and we both got an overwhelming odor that we can't figure out. So
right.
There's sometimes Joe will come in here and find stuff on the floor that shouldn't be on the floor, and they've done quite a few investigations. But we had the thump earlier, so some were like, that's not a normal smell for this building,
Wow.
So I had her go check while you and I were talking there. So when you got done doing the mermaids, where it kind of threw you into doing the sea serpent stuff, because the water stuff is always, I got a background in diving, and I spent a lot of time in ROV and stuff.
Right. That's amazing. No, I was actually up at the Michigan Paranormal Conference up in Sault Ste. Marie several years ago, and
we love that place. We got to go last year.
It's one of
Oh my
my favorite
God.
places.
Loved it.
Everybody up there that's involved with that particular event are some of the nicest people in the world. But what happens is the event is held on a Chippewa reservation, right? It's attached to
Yep.
the tribal people up there,
Right.
and I was at my table, and I never thought about writing a book on Great Lake monsters until people came up to my table and started to say, "Did you hear about this in Lake Michigan, or did you hear about this in Lake Superior?" I thought, no, I never heard about this stuff in my life. So it was those folks up there that were talking to me just haphazardly, about different interests that spurred me to write the book on the Great Lakes.
Interesting.
Now, did you get to spend a lot of time after that driving through the Great Lakes?
I did.
Well,
I didn't drive through the Great Lakes because I would probably have drowned. But I did get, you know what I know, just pulling your chain. But no, I was able to go to every single Great Lake, and it's a fascinating body of water. Almost a little inland ocean, and at one time it really was because they were all connected to the ocean at once, and they were all connected together as well too. But one of the things that gets me is they are so incredibly young. 14,000 years ago. You would think about millions of years, but Lake Champlain, all of our Great Lakes, and Loch Ness are all 14,000 years old. So there's that continuity.
Yeah, what creature, I guess, or what really grabbed you is your favorite sea monster to really pop out of there? I mean, everybody always thinks of Champ, but being in the Northeast, but
sure.
I grew up on Lake Ontario, and we're 5 minutes from Lake Erie right now, and
right. Right. Well, my favorite story in the book was the 1955 shark attack in Lake Michigan of a young boy. And actually, there is a registry of shark attacks, and that is the only shark attack in there that happens in a lake. So there's a young boy that was swimming, and he claims that he was attacked by a shark, and the witnesses as well claim that he was attacked by a shark as well. Now, I did go into some debunking as well and say, a muskellunge can get quite big, or a pike can get quite big. It's very possible that a predatory fish took this happened, but you also have to consider the possibility that a bull shark getting in there, and if a bull shark did get in there, then that does in and of itself become a monster, doesn't it? I mean, it's out of place. It would be an apex predator, and that is kind of like monster making, if you will. And it's very possible the things that we fear so much are really part of this natural world that are just out of place. As a cryptozoologist, there's somebody that self-professes a cryptozoologist. That's one of my favorite things about the field, because something that is completely natural in one ecosystem could be a monster in another one, even though it's completely natural. And those are the kind of things I like to investigate as well too.
Yeah, I mean, you've got places in South America with freshwater bull shark fishing industries, and the whole 13 Days of Terror that Jaws was based on. I mean, that was all the way up a creek, and we know we've got Greenland sharks that are halfway, up to St. Lawrence and stuff like that. But I guess if you came up maybe the Mississippi River up that way, and like the Asian carp are right now. I mean, it could be a possibility.
That's right, yeah. And the snake heads are out there as well too.
Oh, there's
yeah. Invasive species have a way of making their way into places, and that is just it was a very curious thing. But there was so much documentation on this event, which I found to be so interesting.
So, did they have like medical or investigation or anything like that?
In 55, not much of that, but enough evidence to write it in as a shark attack.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, now you've got Wells catfish that are popping everywhere because people have released those things. And,
I know.
They get gigantic.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, you would think about this at some point. It's very possible that if a toddler was swimming someplace, a catfish that size could easily swallow a child. And again, like the idea, these are not supposed to be part of our ecosystems, but
Correct.
whenever they're introduced, then they become monsters. They become monsters when they're, but it's monsters from our own creation.
Yeah, we just we had a rash of Asian eels that got in one of our reservoirs.
Oh.
And, all of a sudden, where did these things come
That's
from?
right.
And it was somebody was using for bait, and it was like, oh, one for the water gods, and then one for here.
Yes,
and,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
And it's the Florida industry of all the hybrids, the peacock bass and everything that were bounced into those things, the razor fish that are in the canals.
Right.
What's your next crazy cryptid to go after?
I don't know. I finished my On series. I officially finished my On series. But I think what I want to do now is, again, which is one of the reasons I'm bugging you guys so much, is I want to start working with different groups and see how they approach the paranormal, and then putting that together as kind of an essay on my different experiences with those people and how they view what's going on out there.
I love it.
Yeah, we're definitely up to coming down.
Yeah.
Find a couple of days and swing down and take a look, because I love the ridge. I mean, that whole area for me, the historical stuff is, with Washington through there,
Right.
and that's, like I said, my first set of screams and stuff. I just like that area. It's just an amazing area. You're outside Pittsburgh, and just the cool stuff. And when we look at Seth's doing all that stuff with small town right there in Minerva, and how far away is that? And
That's right.
Opposed to West Virginia and the craziness that goes on there, and
that's the thing about
triangle of weirdness,
Yeah, well, the Chestnut Ridge extends. It terminates in Morgantown, West Virginia. So we have that connection. It's the whole part of that Appalachian Plateau. Did you hear that?
That was a truck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Something's roaring behind you. Yeah. But no, it's part of that Appalachian Plateau, and and by extension, that is also the same type of geographical formation in which the Mothman emanated from as well too. So it's all interconnected.
Yeah, and like I said, that ties into our history here, and that stuff I was telling you about ahead of time, pre-show, with some of the things that we found in the strangeness with Sullivan, and that.
Yeah.
Oh, Christy popped her microphone on there for a minute.
Go ahead.
I did. I was just waiting my turn. I was getting ready.
Go
So
ahead.
I feel like after all of these discussions and really hearing what you've had to say tonight, is it fair to say that one of your goals or your goal here, with all your work and everything you do, is not necessarily to nail one particular thing down, but to really see how and if they all do tie together, and why and how, and really marry them however they are supposed to be married, if they're supposed to be married in a certain way. Does that make sense?
I think you've hit the nail on the proverbial head. I think that's the case.
Okay.
I would like to not so much look at them from a microscope, but through a telescope. I want to see the overall picture. I want to see why we need these things in our life. I want to see why they mean so much to us. And the only way to do that is by looking throughout history, by looking at contemporary resources as well as antiquated resources as well too, and just start seeing how there is this inevitable chain of being that links everything together.
Awesome. I love it. And just by saying, and I think that one of the big things for me that's important that not enough people do is realize that this is not just about doing things your way. You do things your way. You need to do things your way, but it's important to understand that things happen differently for other people, and that we need to work together with that, not just think it has to be follow certain, process or certain
Right.
steps or whatever the
Right.
case is,
Yeah.
to realize and understand that it's different for everybody because we all have our own journey.
We have our own journey, and also a lot of this is very subjective. Some, you can have a group of people out in the woods, and somebody has an experience while the other group doesn't. Same way with hauntings or anything like
Mhm.
that. Sometimes it feels as if experiences are gifted, if that makes any sense as well, too.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and
You
it's
don't have to
all
be gifted to have an experience.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I made the analogy one time that it appears to me that on a lot of these types of experiences, it's almost as if there is a circuit that has to be tripped, not only by you, but by what is being identified as well too. It almost has to be an unwritten agreement that, look, I'm going to manifest myself to you, and you're going to have to accept what is going to happen, that kind of a thing. It's almost like I said, this agreement that is made on a very, very um basic level, between two living things.
What is your favorite research piece of equipment?
Oh, that's a great question. um you know what, huh I'm gonna just say
Anything from a
my
flashlight to
yeah
a computer?
I'm gonna say my eyes, because I'll tell you, because what we talked about earlier, uh, a lot of people take pictures and they say it never came out, or I didn't catch anything on camera, but they've had an experience that has affected them. This has happened to me at many times at conferences. People will come up to me and they're in tears. Something has affected them systemically, mind, body, and spirit, and they don't need to validate that with me. They have to probably validate this with other people if they're going to be believed on a scientific level. But if you have that experience, that is your experience. That's something very private with you. If you prefer to make it public, that's fine. But I'm going to say my eyes and probably my basic intuition is my favorite tools.
Awesome.
Good for you. So after all this, do you want to end the show with another message?
Yes, I do.
Your family's very active. So the last few minutes, I got very cold, like spirits around me, hardcore. And then I started feeling sick to my stomach. And then I started to pick up on an uncle of yours. Can you make a connection with an uncle of yours who may have been sick or had those kinds of issues with stomach?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Several, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Well, this one would be a ladies' man because at one point he was behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders
Okay.
and like put his head on my shoulder. Do you know which
Yes,
one this is?
I do. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Yes.
I heard the name Ben. What does that mean to you?
I did have a dear friend that passed away last year named Ben, but he was not a ladies' man, nor was he related to me. But
I think that both of them are here
okay,
because I heard Ben after I received everything from your uncle.
wow.
So Ben is also telling me he is here.
That's
I love you, man. I love you, man. I love you, man. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Love you, man.
And I do understand that. I do understand that very much.
Okay. Excellent. So,
Yeah.
by the look on Mike's face. Uh-oh. On that note, I know I feel like everything's like hopping around me. Everything's like definitely hopping around me. So he's pulled out the big guns. So
I
sorry,
see
I'm
that.
getting antsy too. So Ron, thank you so very much. This
Yes,
was
I had a
the
great
2
time.
hours flew. It
It
was
did.
so informative. You're so easy to talk to. This is great.
Well, I appreciate that, and let's try to get together sometime in the summertime,
We need to
even
plan
if it's
it.
just a 1 day type of thing. I would love to
Mhm.
get out there, see what your techniques are, and see, maybe all of us in the same type of mindset. We'll see what kind of frequencies we can stir.
Do you want to know what kind of technique Mike practices?
Yeah.
Bring Christy out in the woods and then take off and leave her. That's the kind of technique Mike
Got
uses.
to use bait.
Oh yeah, it's
Actually,
great.
For
It's great.
Christmas, I got the best bait I got a Kentucky Fried Chicken log.
That's so funny.
It's a KFC. Smells like KFC.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I gotta decide if I'm gonna cut it up in pieces or I'm gonna burn the whole log.
Oh.
It smells like a giant box.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
KFC. So if anything, it'll bring bears or cats or
raccoons.
or a couple of drunk college kids. I don't
That's
know.
right. That's
But,
right.
you
That's
know,
right.
They'll be coming out of the woods in droves.
But we should get something.
Oh
Yeah.
Pick your spot.
Yeah.
You're 5 hours from us, and
Oh, that's a quick
Yeah.
drive.
shoot straight down there.
Absolutely.
We'll make it happen, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking
Yeah.
the time to
Thank
join
you.
us tonight.
Well, it was so nice meeting you guys up at Hillview, and ever
Oh,
since I
me
met
too.
you, I could not wait to actually sit down and talk with you. And like you said, the 2 hours just flew by.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll do another night.
for
Can't
sure.
wait. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
There's so many different concepts that are out there, and guys, please take a look
You're
at
frozen. There you
Ron's
go.
books. The links are there. And you've got a lot of other podcasts, older stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
Go search, find his stuff. You're speaking where next?
I don't know. I am speaking someplace next, though. I'm not sure
He's
where
like,
that's
yeah,
at,
no
though.
idea.
No idea.
He asked us about us. We forgot
Yeah,
to ask you.
yeah. I have no idea. But I definitely am speaking someplace. I'll get back to you on that.
Well, where can
Yeah,
they
and
check
we'll
on
post it
that?
on the page.
Where can they check on that?
Well, on my website that's being developed. So let's see here. Yeah. See, the person that's developing
post it.
the person that's making my website is her name's Jackie Palmer. She probably should get on a little bit quicker. So I'll just put her name out there so she hurries up a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, on that note. All right. So
Yeah.
this has been wild and crazy, man. There have been a lot of surprises tonight, haven't
Yes,
there?
there has.
Can't bat an eyelash with this show.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Oh, that's great. Well, Ron, thank you so much.
Thank you,
brother.
guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. I cannot wait.
You too.
Yes, sir.
Have a
All right.
happy and safe new year.
You too, guys. Thank you very much. Bless you.
Take
Bye.
care. You too. Wow, that
Bye.
was a really cool show.
Yes.
I know I had to work tonight. You got to just kind of sit there and click some buttons. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, again, if you're in Buffalo, in Depew tomorrow night, let me get this up here. Click on the right banner. Well, Christy will be here tomorrow doing a live reading again. We're at Paranormal Oddities, and she'll be part of the venue here at Paranormal Oddities.
Yes.
So reach out to Joe at Paranormal Oddities.
Or just
support
show up
his
tomorrow night
show.
if it works. Come on,
Yes.
be at the door.
So, we really thank Joe for letting us be here
Yes.
tonight. And,
Yes. Love you, Joe.
it's a wonderful, wonderful location. Check out his show. And it's a great location. If you're looking for your paranormal stuff and you're in Western New York, please come over to Paranormal Oddities.
He's got it all.
Our
And then
first
some.
show here, and hopefully there'll be more after this. you know? So
I'm sure there
we've got
will.
some interesting activity we haven't been on the show.
Yeah, we really
tonight,
do because
so,
I looked over that way and he wasn't even looking at me, and then boom, Mike just looked right over there.
Yeah,
This place is
some kind of
hopping the
odors
later it
popped
gets.
in, so- but
The
thank-
show's going to be interesting tomorrow night.
Yeah. So thank you, Ron, for
Yes.
being with us. Next week we've got Heather Taddy on. We were really looking for that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
met her in Michigan at the Michigan Paracon. Very
Fun.
cool person to hang out with. So, and again,
Yes, sir.
check out Ron's stuff. The links in there, and
Yeah.
more will be in the bio. So,
As always, thank you for joining us and spending this time with us tonight. The new year's coming. Let's put our intentions out there to make it a positive and happy and healthy, better new year finally. Stay safe, be healthy, take care of each other, and until next time, stay
Sample on.
safe and sample on.